Greetings. This is the Mega MatCat, and today on MatCat Reviews, we're doing the new and highly anticipated Sunset Overdrive, the Xbox One exclusive. I just picked this up and have been messing around with it, and having played it for well over 10 hours, I think I can give a little bit of an insight on it. Now, for those of you not familiar, this game is a new third-person action shooter from Insomniac Games. Yes, the guys behind Ratchet and Clank and a bunch of other great stuff. And it continues the tradition of the highly mobile sort of action shooter that Ratchet and Clank was, but with a bit of a different style and flair to it. With that being said, on to today's topics. We're going to be doing story, gameplay, its technical aspects, of course, like graphics and sound, the multiplayer features to a limited extent, and the overall pros, cons, and should you buy this game. I'm not going to be doing a number or score anymore because I really feel that doesn't give you an idea of what the game is really like. Numbers can be so arbitrary, and especially in reviews, they can be subjective. So, on that subject, I'm going to tell you what's good, what's bad, and if I feel you should buy it. And we'll get there. But first, of course, you need to understand what the game is. As you can see, it's a third-person, highly mobile, action shooter hybrid of some kind. Really hard to describe in a simple genre or phrase. It mixes a number of materials. For example, it's going to give you action platforming, rapid weapons, leveling up systems, all kinds of different stuff. It's got a variety of kooky and crazy weapons, amazing customization, and as a general rule, feels as if somebody just said, let's take as much awesome shit as we can pack into one game and try to make it stick. Did it all work? Well, that's what we'll talk about today. But as a general rule, the game feels like a fast, almost over-the-top version of, traditional third-person shooters. Kind of like if someone, mixed a third-person shooter with Bayonetta, and the two had a kid. It's kind of what this feels like. Speaking on Bayonetta, I may do a review of that shortly as well. I just trying to get everything I can about it sorted out before I make any decisions. Either way, and I'm referring to Bayonetta too, by the way. But anyway, on to the story. Basically, mutants monster apocalypse starts because a company pushes through a new type of energy drink, and now anyone who drank it is now a monster. And you meet a bunch of different characters surviving in the cities, geeks, ninjas, like this chick, who's also a Girl Scout ninja, apparently. And you also meet vendors, wacky mad scientists, survivalists. It's complicated. But basically you are, well, whatever you want to be. No, this is not the default character, folks. That is the guy I made. And yes, he is a headphone-wearing glam rock psychopath with all kinds of weirdness. Customization is a big part of the game, but as a result of that, there isn't the cohesiveness to the story that you would normally find in a game from Insomniac. Now, that being said, while that is a weak point in the game's overall quality, I feel as though that's not a severe detractor from the game's overall potential. But the fact is you can customize the character to be whatever you want. Male, female, big, small. Dress them up however you like. Equip them with a melee weapon. Give them all kinds of cool outfits. But the story is just generally that you wake up after the apocalypse and, well, you decide that it's time to go rip-roaring through the city and have fun. It's really sort of an odd feeling to see a game that takes the apocalypse and treats it so humorously. And the story does have a good bit of humor. It's well voice-acted and has a number of interesting characters, but the story is definitely a weak point on the game's mark. It feels that the story is a weaker part of the game than the gameplay or other assets of it. There's other aspects that are much better than its actual gameplay. Or actual story, I'm sorry. Getting
that's
my
funny, 'cause
things
I
mixed
prefer
up
to
here,
lift
aren't I?
my spirits with
Oh well.
actual...
Anyway, on to the gameplay in question. I couldn't think of a better way to explain it than to simply show you this insane boss fight
A giant
that I ran into while playing the game and testing it out. Yes, that's right. You are fighting a giant floating inflatable mascot monster. I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. Basically, the game is all about maneuvering and positioning without ever slowing down. Stopping is actually a bad thing in this game. In a lot of games, it's all about taking cover, hiding from your enemies, and then popping out to put a few rounds in them. This game is completely the opposite. It's all about getting in close, covering distance, and hurting your enemy with as much firepower as you can generate. It's all about movement. You stop, you die. But what's awesome is that the game has such a massive variety of weapons and equipment that you can use that it really feels as if the game has, almost no limit to the amount of variety you can throw into it. Right now, I'm skating on scaffolding and railings, hundreds of feet in the air, bouncing on satellite dishes, and as you can see, I can move like nobody's business. It's smooth, it flows beautifully, it has very little trouble with navigation. What's also interesting is how accurate the movement is. Many platformers suffer because they lose control when you're in the air, or they feel sticky and have very poor, what would the term be, grip. It feels like you don't have the ability to really stick your landings or hold on to your objects. When you're grinding or moving along a building, you sort of feel like you're slip-sliding on ice. Not the case here. This game feels like it's literally, guiding you through all the possibilities, yet you never lose control. There's no real restriction to what you can and can't do. If you want to do it, you can do it. The only thing I haven't figured out how to do yet is actually fly, and I'm sure I'll unlock that eventually. But the game does not restrict you the way a lot of other games would. You're open and free to do whatever you like, and as you can see, I'm just skating around putting holes in this thing's face. Now, this applies also to the multiplayer, which I'll get into later, but for the purposes of this control scheme applies to everything. Buildings, water, vehicles, whatever. If it exists in the world, odds are there's something you can do with it. Whether it's bouncing on it like it's a trampoline, or skating on it like you're wearing skateboards for shoes. Truth be told, of all the games I've played in recent years, no game ever had the speed or intensity that a game like this could generate, simply because they were too limited in their world. And it's a testament to what the new consoles can do, and that games like this exist. Now, the boss fight you're watching took about 4 or 5 minutes, and to be fair, it is one of those things where boss fights like this are the highlights, but even just basic gameplay can be a frantic and pulse-pounding adventure, especially when large amounts of enemies get in the screen or start causing real headaches. I wish I could say that there's another game I can name that matches it, but the closest thing I can think of is games like Ratchet and Clank. And even then, their worlds were still somewhat more limited because they were more or less, tamped down by the, restrictions of invisible walls and other things like that, which this game actually makes fun of. This game actually pokes fun at the invisible walls joke that you find in a lot of games by actually having a real invisible wall as a plot point. Very funny stuff, but it's tied into the gameplay so that it actually has a reason to exist. And big guy's dead. Basically, this game is controlled anarchy. And I can't think of a better way to describe it than, chaos given, direct control. It may be chaotic and unstable, but it's chaos you can control. Now, onto its technical specs. As an Xbox One exclusive, I have to admit I'm surprised by how good it came out looking, because it's weird to see a game this colorful and vibrant on a modern console. It's even more weird for a game like this to not only look great, but to have completely and utterly perfect frame rate. And I don't mean that as a joke. I mean, in the time I've played this game, I cannot remember a single slowdown. It's been 60 frames a second, or at least as far as I can tell. It's had no slowdown, no frame drop. The game moves with smoothness and style that few games can match. The character designs are kind of weird, in much the same way that it looks like someone took random junk and patched characters together with it. Yet that's actually part of the charm here. What I like about it is that the game has a sort of humorous edge to it, where it's pretty much the apocalypse, yet you wouldn't know it from the way people are acting. I mean, everybody's, just doing whatever they want. You party, you have fun, you drink booze, you build weapons out of random crap. I mean, seriously, I have 2 different weapons that fire records at people. One that fires a teddy bear wrapped in TNT, and another that drops an inflatable toy stuffed with acid that spews it out like a sprinkler. This game does not take itself too seriously, yet the colors and graphics never fade or draw out and never get boring. They're clear, they're clean, they have a flair and a style to them that few games touch. And I think that the reason this game is gonna succeed, if it succeeds at all, is simply because it's not your typical run-and-gun military jingoistic fare. Don't get me wrong, I love myself a good modern shooter, but there's times when I want some color in my life, and this game delivers it in spades. I honestly think that more games like this need to be out there, and I'm glad to see someone trying to put it out. Props on Insomnia. But as far as the overall technical abilities are concerned, its audio is top-notch. Voice work is well done. Could be a little bit louder. I think that the audio controls are set to focus on sound and music, but the dialogue gets lost a little bit. Graphics are top-notch in my opinion. I love the color, I love the flash, the special effects are excellent. It definitely looks like someone really went to town on this whole shebang. Now, that being said, there are, of course, areas where I think it could do better. A good example of this is simply that I think there's sometimes when the animation of the character gets so out of control because you're jumping and ducking and grinding and sliding and all this other stuff, that one of the side effects is that the animations will actually mold into each other and start to look odd if you're pushing it too fast. It's not a big issue. And on a technical level overall, I would give this game a high ranking because it's very good. Doesn't mean it doesn't have a few flaws, but overall, I had a blast with it visually. I think it looks great and I think it sounds great. And it has almost perfect frame rate. If there's anything that is, wrong about it technically, it's overwhelmed by all the good. I do think that if they continue the series, and it should continue, in my opinion, one of the things they may want to do is look into giving the game's vertical segments a little bit more of an intuitive base. What I mean is to say, some areas have you going vertical to get to new areas, and because of the way the game's laid out and all the colors, there are times when it's hard to tell where you should be going because of the sheer amount of activity and depth on the screen. You sometimes don't realize that there's more than one way to get to a place, or that there's, other means by which you can ascend. A minor gripe, but something to consider. Still, I have way too much fun with this game to complain in any real sense. Now onto the multiplayer. which I do not have video of, sorry. The multiplayer, known as Chaos Squad, is a cooperative effort. 8 players, up to 8 players. And it's essentially a microcosm of the game itself. 8 players doing focused activities together, creating absolute mayhem. What few rounds I've played of Chaos Squad are fun, energetic, a little bit confusing because of all the explosions and stuff, but you eventually do get a grip on where everything is and how to navigate. Now, multiplayer does have a problem in which over time it becomes repetitive. I mean, the same missions will repeat eventually. It's not bad, especially if you're playing with friends, but I feel as if there could have been more done with it. Another thing that I think is strange is that the multiplayer is not a separate entity in and of itself. It is actually built into the single-player game, in so much that you actually can go to areas in the single-player game and hook up with others for Chaos Squad at any time. So, in a way, I love that because it means I'm not, forced to, navigate multiple menus if I want to play multiplayer. By the same token, I also feel at times like the fact that it's there means that there's just one more thing in the environment that I can take note of that I can either use or ignore, and I feel like having a separate menu might not have been a bad idea. Still, it's an innovative concept, and I like what they're trying. Pardon. But as a gamer, and as I've said before, I'm the solo gamer. I sort of work on my own. I still feel that the mass integration of the multiplayer feels a little odd, but it's good. It's not bad at all. Not my style typically, but I'll give credit where credit is due. Now, it's not going to appeal to the Call of Duty crowd, I'll tell you that. It's co-op only as far as I've been able to tell, and it feels almost as if the game is eschewing traditional multiplayer to try and push a co-op narrative, which, hey, you know what? I'm all for. But you make your own decisions on that. I'm not the guy to ask. I'm more of the guy who goes, I'm here for the single-player romp, nothing else.
Okay,
now,
picnic site. Looks like the crane guy.
On to the last bit of this here. We're going to go ahead and do something different for my final evaluation. I'm going to give you the pros, I'm going to give you the cons, and I'm going to tell you if this game is worth purchasing or not. No numbers, none of that. It's pros, cons, and should you buy the game. So, that does bring up the question, why? Honestly, like I said earlier, I'm not big on the whole numbers thing for reviews. I don't rate games by 7.9 or 8.1 or 5 stars out of 5 on my own. I did that at first with my reviews because I wanted to try and keep some sort of consistency, but honestly, if I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to do it my way. So, for this review, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you the pros, I'm going to tell you the cons, I'm going to lay things out honestly and without any, BS, and you make your own decisions. If you like my recommendation, go for it. If not, your choice, whatever you prefer. I'm just letting you know how I think. Alright, now, that being said, on to the pros of the game. It has amazingly colorful visuals, as you can see. Everything is bright and vibrant. It has a strong soundtrack. Its humor can be very good at times. It has an insane freedom of movement and amazing weapons. It has good sound effects, and it's just plain fun. Tons of fun, to be honest. I can't think of any game that is as much fun right out of the gate as this game was. Now, as far as the downsides, the cons, well, to be honest, I can't give too many, but there are some things that I was concerned with. The story is weak in spots, to the point where there are times when I thought that maybe the story could have been done a little bit better. The chaotic action is sometimes overwhelming. Not always, but sometimes. Multiplayer is fun and gets repetitive over time, but it is fun. and not all the humor comes off as good as it should. There's times where some of it is really groan-worthy. Still, it does much better positive than negative. So, take that with a grain of salt, but in my opinion, its goods outweigh its bads. Now, lastly, the final question, and the defining question. Should you buy? If you're an Xbox One over, yes. This is an Xbox One exclusive, and it may actually be one of the first games that makes this system worth buying. I've owned an Xbox One purely for Killer Instinct for almost a year, and I feel as if this game is finally the game that should change things. It should really start boosting attention and get that console some more love. Now, is it a perfect game? No. But as far as a fun time, both single player and multiplayer, there's few games I can name that meet anything close to this game's entertainment value. And I'll be honest, there's few games I can say, off the top of my head, that had me playing the game for 10 hours straight. Sunset Overdrive has its flaws, it has its weaknesses. But like any game, it really boils down to a single question. Were you either entertained, intrigued, or, emotionally invested in the game? And in this case, this game wins on the first one. It's not really an intriguing game because the story is sort of one note. It is humorous and will make you laugh a lot, but you're not going to be emotionally invested in these characters. Because really, you're not playing this game for that. You're playing this game to go crazy and rampage. A colorful world with awesome weapons and lots of crazy enemies. And in that regard, this game succeeds wholeheartedly. Anyway, that's just my opinion. But if you own an Xbox One, I recommend it. Get it. Anyway, that being said, the cat's gonna go take a nap on the world. I think that this is a great game. You should probably check it out. I'll be doing another review for Bayonetta number 2 shortly. And I'll also have something else for Halloween that I'm almost done with. The first episode of a new comedy series I'm going to be trying out will be coming out shortly. Anyway, Mega Matt Cat is done for the evening. I will see you next time. Signing off. Cat will be back, baby.